20 of the biggest generic prescription drug makers are accused of committing a multi-billion-dollar fraud on people in the U.S. 43 states and Puerto Rico filed a complaint Friday alleging the companies coordinated to inflate prices and reduce competition on more than 100 generic prescription drugs. Last night on 60 Minutes, correspondent Bill Whitaker talked to investigators who say the evidence is in company emails, texts, and phone records.
We can see that competitor A is talking to competitor B 5 times on one day. And what that allows us to do is to go into our document database and look on that day at what they were saying.
It all snapped into sharp focus when he matched phone logs to thousands of text messages from Heritage Pharmaceuticals. Nielsen says this exchange with competitor Citron Pharma showed collusion to increase the price of a diabetes medication. The text messages implicate 2 other companies, Aurobindo and Teva, the world's largest generic drug maker. The national accounts manager at Heritage wrote, "We are raising the price right now. Just letting you know, Teva says they will follow. Aurobindo agrees too." A corporate account representative from Citron answered, "We are definitely into raised pricing, are doing this immediately."
We reached out to the Association for Accessible Medicines, a trade group which represents generic prescription drug companies. Those companies deny engaging in any illegal collusion. In a statement, the association says it is committed to supporting policies that promote competition. It also notes prices have declined overall in the last 3 years. Connecticut Attorney General William Tong was featured in the 60 Minutes report. He is leading the state's coalition against the generic drug companies. Good morning.
Good morning, John.
So the complaint is 510 pages, 34 counts, 20 companies, 15 individuals. That seems like a pretty broad scope.
Yeah, it's what we believe to be the biggest corporate cartel in history and probably the biggest antitrust price-fixing case in this country, certainly right now, and maybe in our nation's history.
You say these companies are too big to care. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, you said not too big to fail, but too big to care on the air last night. That gave me chills when I heard you say that.
Yeah, and what's really troubling is it's clear that they're just going to break the law as long as they can afford to do so. You know, these are extraordinarily powerful forces that got away with price increases as high as 1,000, 2,000. Last night on 60 Minutes, they reported that a drug that I take, doxycycline, saw a price increase of 8,000%. And they've gotten away with it for such a long time. And that's why it took more than 40 states coming together and taking them on behalf of the people of this country.
But why have they gotten away with it?
You know, it's just that they're so powerful and there's so much money to be made and nobody has held them accountable. And we took the first step in 2016 in filing a case focused on a company called Heritage. But this case now that we filed on Friday is 10 times bigger. Hundreds of drugs, almost 20 of the biggest generic drug manufacturers, 16 individual corporate defendants. We're blowing the lid off this whole thing because, this is an attack on the American people. It's a massive fraud that focuses on the drugs that we take every day.
Anybody who's on medication will say, gosh, the price of drugs has gone up a lot.
Yeah.
Or it's affected people in their family a great deal. How did you find out and discover that there was this alleged collusion?
So I really have to hand it to Mike Cole and Joe Nielsen in my office. You know, they read an article about a drug called digoxin, 5 years ago, and they said something's not right about a huge price spike that isn't explainable by the market or market forces. So they started asking questions. But really what blew this whole thing wide open are the phone records. And we've gotten, I think, 11 million phone records, 7 million documents, and they started piecing it together. And what they saw—
What do those phone records show?
What they saw is that around price increases, competitors started calling each other at a very high rate, high-frequency contacts between competitors, sometimes for a minute, 2 minutes, 45 minutes. Teva talking to Mylan, talking to Sandoz, back and forth, representatives of these companies having conversations which are highly illegal. When you talk about price fixing.
Illegal because a market is supposed to exist without people trading, whispering behind the scenes. It's supposed to exist with competition, buyers and sellers.
Right. Congress created the generic drug market so that there would be competition after patents expire. You would expect competitors to jump into the generic drug market and compete with each other, and price should go down.
What disturbs you most about all of this?
You know, what disturbs me most is that this was undertaken utterly without shame. And it feels like, you know, it's just a routine feature of the industry. You know, these folks live in New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, not far from this studio. And they go in the morning and they break the law. And then they go to lunch. And then they go home and they watch TV and they make dinner. And then they get up in the morning again and they break the law. And it's this routine everydayedness of it that really bothers me.
What's going to be the outcome? Criminal charges? People go to jail? What's going to happen?
Sure. You know, I think there's a criminal investigation being undertaken by the Department of Justice. We have civil jurisdiction along with our sister states in 44 other states. We had a previous lawsuit that had 49 states and territories. And we want to hold them accountable. And as I said last night on 60 Minutes, we want to claw back the money that they stole from the American people.
But, you know, many of the companies say, Teva, for instance, says they've done nothing wrong. The drug companies say prices go up with drug shortages and the market forces.
This also bothers me. We have emails, we have text messages, we have cooperating witnesses, we have high-frequency records of phone calls that happen, you know, on the days that price increases happen. You have competitors talking to each other over and over and over again, and then to look us in the eye and say, never happened, we didn't do it, nothing wrong has occurred, and we're not fixing prices or allocating market share amongst each other. It's just not credible.
All right, Attorney General Tong, thank you so much for being with us.